behind the iconic clicking sounds and invisible terror lurking in the jungle, Predator harbors secrets that would make Dutch himself say, "Get to the chopper." From a Transformers legend voicing the alien to a martial arts superstar's spectacular meltdown, the making of this sci-fi classic involved everything from accidental genius design choices to on-set arm-measuring contests that would determine champagne ownership. Fact 1. Optimus Prime voiced the Predator's clicks. Most people know Peter Cullen as the iconic voice of Optimus Prime from the Transformers franchise, but what they don't know is that this same voice actor also created one of the most memorable sounds in horror movie history. Cullen provided the distinctive clicking and gurgling vocalizations that the Predator makes throughout the 1987 film, though he went completely uncredited for this work at the time. The story behind how Cullen created these alien sounds is both fascinating and surprisingly personal. During a recording session, the producers initially didn't want to show Cullen what the Predator actually looked like, which frustrated the experienced voice actor since he needed visual reference to create appropriate sounds. When they finally revealed the creature's design to him, Cullen was immediately struck by its appearance, particularly the mandibles and overall alien features. The clicking sound itself came from a very specific childhood memory that had stayed with Cullen for decades. As a young boy growing up in Massachusetts, he remembered walking along a beach during low tide and discovering an upside-down horseshoe crab that was dying in the hot sun. The creature was making bubbling, clicking noises as air escaped through its shell, and those sounds made such an impression on young Cullen that they remained vivid in his memory years later. When faced with creating vocalizations for this terrifying alien hunter, Cullen drew upon that long-ago beach experience and recreated those distinctive clicking and bubbling sounds. The recording process itself had its challenges, as the boom microphone initially needed to be repositioned several times before they captured the sounds properly, but once they got it right, everyone knew they had something special. Cullen has mentioned in interviews that he was reluctant to take on more monster voice work at the time, because previous projects had strained his vocal cords to the point where he was even spitting up blood. However, the Predator sounds were actually easier on his voice, since they didn't require the same kind of vocal strain as traditional monster roars or screams. Fact 2. Jean-Claude Van Damme's 6 different firing stories. One of the most confusing chapters in Predator's production history involves Jean-Claude Van Damme's departure from the film, because nearly everyone who worked on the movie tells a completely different story about what actually happened. Van Damme was originally cast to play the Predator when the creature was designed to be a more agile, martial arts-focused alien hunter, but his time on the project ended in disaster, with at least 6 conflicting accounts of how and why he left. The first version comes from actor Bill Duke, who played Mac in the film, and claimed that Van Damme kept passing out from dehydration while wearing the heavy costume in the sweltering Mexican jungle heat. According to Duke, producer Joel Silver warned Van Damme that if he passed out one more time, he would be fired. And sure enough, Van Damme collapsed again during a stunt sequence involving wires and trees, leading to his immediate dismissal. The second story involves Van Damme allegedly destroying expensive equipment in a fit of rage. Stunt coordinator Craig Baxley claimed that Van Damme became frustrated with the costume, ripped off the $20,000 Predator head, and threw it on the ground where it shattered into pieces, prompting Silver to fire him on the spot and tell him he would never work in Hollywood again. A third account from special effects supervisor Joel Hynek paints Van Damme as creatively stubborn, insisting that he wanted the Predator to be a kickboxing alien and refusing to stop demonstrating his martial arts moves on set. When Silver told him that the Predator wasn't supposed to be a kickboxer, Van Damme reportedly responded by telling Silver to "kiss my balls" before walking off the production. Other versions suggest Van Damme was simply too short compared to the towering actors like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers, that he complained constantly about being unrecognizable in the suit, or that he raised legitimate safety concerns about dangerous stunts that could have injured him in the cumbersome costume. Van Damme himself has maintained that he was fired for refusing to perform what he considered an unsafe jump, claiming that the stuntman who eventually did the stunt broke his leg, though production members deny any such injury occurred. Fact 3. Shane Black was killed for refusing to write. Shane Black's death scene in Predator represents one of Hollywood's most petty acts of producer revenge, because he was deliberately killed off early in the film as punishment for refusing to do the real job he was hired for. Black, who had just written the hit screenplay for Lethal Weapon, was cast in the small role of Hawkins not because of his acting abilities, but because the producers wanted him on set in Mexico where he could perform script rewrites if needed. The plan was simple and fairly common in Hollywood at the time. Hire a talented screenwriter as an actor, get them to the filming location, and then ask them to polish the script during downtime between scenes. Producer John Davis later admitted that they specifically put Black in the movie because he was a great writer who had just created the successful Lethal Weapon script, and they hoped to get him to do a rewrite on the Predator screenplay while he was there in the jungle with them. However, Black had other ideas about his role on the production and made it clear that he saw himself as an actor on this particular project, not as a writer. When the producers approached him about doing script work, Black firmly refused and told them that he was there to act in the movie, not to write it. This was during a time when Black was juggling multiple high-profile projects simultaneously, including rewrite work on Lethal Weapon for director Richard Donner and development of the Monster Squad with Thomas Dekker. The producers were not pleased with Black's refusal to help with the script, and according to Davis, they decided to take their frustration out on his character in a very direct way. Since Black wouldn't give them the writing help they wanted, they made sure that Hawkins became the very first victim of the Predator, dying just 7 minutes into the film after chasing the escaped prisoner Anna into the jungle. This early death effectively removed Black from most of the production, since his character was no longer needed for the remainder of the shooting schedule. Black did contribute one small writing touch to the film despite his refusal to do major rewrites. The adult jokes that his character Hawkins tells throughout his brief screen time, including his memorable inappropriate joke about his girlfriend that he delivers to Billy. Fact 4. James Cameron accidentally created the mandibles. The Predator's most distinctive and terrifying feature, its articulated mandibles that open to reveal rows of sharp teeth, exists purely because of a casual comment made during an airplane flight between two friends who were discussing completely different projects. James Cameron, the director of Aliens, accidentally created one of science fiction cinema's most iconic monster designs through a simple offhand remark to special effects artist Stan Winston while they were traveling together. Winston had been hired to completely redesign the Predator creature after the original design proved to be a disaster during filming in Mexico, and he was struggling to come up with a new look that would be both practical to film and genuinely frightening. The timing of this creative crisis coincided with a business trip that both Winston and Cameron needed to take to discuss their ongoing collaboration on the Aliens film, so they ended up sitting next to each other on the plane. During the flight, Winston was sketching out various concepts and ideas for the new Predator design, trying to figure out what would make this alien hunter truly memorable and scary. Cameron, who was curious about what his friend was working on, looked over at the drawings and started offering suggestions about the creature's appearance. After studying Winston's sketches for a while, Cameron made what seemed like a throwaway comment that would end up defining the character forever. Cameron told Winston that he had always wanted to see a movie creature with mandibles, the kind of articulated jaw structures that insects and arthropods have in real life. At the time, most alien designs in science fiction films featured fairly conventional mouth structures, and Cameron felt that mandibles would be something genuinely different and unsettling that audiences hadn't seen before on screen. Winston immediately recognized the brilliance of this suggestion and incorporated the mandible concept into his redesign of the Predator. The mandibles not only made the creature look more alien and threatening, but they also served practical storytelling purposes, allowing the Predator to make its distinctive clicking sounds and giving it a more predatory, insect-like quality that perfectly matched its role as the ultimate hunter. Cameron later joked that he takes complete credit for the mandibles, even though he had nothing else to do with the Predator design process. Fact 5. Kevin Peter Hall played both monster and pilot. Kevin Peter Hall holds the unique distinction of being both the main villain and one of the heroes in Predator, because this 7-foot-2-inch tall actor appears in two completely different roles that most viewers never noticed. While Hall is credited for playing the terrifying alien hunter that stalks Arnold Schwarzenegger's team through the jungle, he also makes an uncredited appearance as one of the helicopter pilots who arrives at the end of the film to rescue Dutch from the aftermath of his explosive battle with the creature. Hall's dual role in the film happened somewhat by accident, as the production needed additional actors for the rescue helicopter scene, and Hall was available since his work as the Predator was essentially finished by that point in the shooting schedule. The filmmakers decided to put him in the pilot's seat for the final sequence, where he appears completely unmasked and recognizable as a regular human character, creating an ironic situation where the same person who spent most of the movie trying to kill the protagonist ends up being part of his salvation. This casting choice creates one of the most unusual situations in movie history, where a single actor plays both the primary antagonist and a rescue team member in the same film. Hall's appearance as the helicopter pilot is brief but clearly visible during the scene where Dutch is picked up and flown to safety, and eagle-eyed viewers who know what to look for can spot the same distinctive facial features that belong to the man inside the Predator suit. The decision to use Hall in this second role also demonstrates the practical, no-nonsense approach that many productions took during the 1980s, when filmmakers often used available cast and crew members to fill small roles rather than hiring additional actors. Hall was a trained actor with experience beyond just wearing monster costumes, having studied theatrical arts in college and worked in various stage productions before moving into film work. This double duty was actually quite common for Hall throughout his career, as he often took on multiple roles within the same productions. His height and distinctive appearance made him memorable in both costume and out-of-costume roles, and directors frequently found creative ways to use his presence in their films beyond just the creature work he was originally hired to perform. Fact 6. Arnold's sneaky arm wrestling victory. Arnold Schwarzenegger pulled off one of the most elaborate practical jokes in movie history by orchestrating a completely rigged arm measuring contest with Jesse Ventura that involved secretly bribing the wardrobe department to help him win a bottle of champagne through pure deception. The prank began when Ventura, who was a former professional wrestler known as The Body, visited the costume department to get fitted for his military gear and was delighted to learn that his arms measured 1 inch bigger around than Schwarzenegger's massive biceps. Ventura was so excited about having larger arms than the former bodybuilding champion that he immediately went to Schwarzenegger and suggested they settle the matter with an official arm measuring contest, with the winner receiving a bottle of champagne as the prize. What Ventura didn't know was that Schwarzenegger had already anticipated this exact scenario and had secretly approached the wardrobe department before filming began to set up an elaborate con. Schwarzenegger had specifically instructed the costume team to tell Ventura that his arms were bigger than they actually were, knowing that the former wrestler's competitive nature would compel him to challenge the Austrian oak to a direct comparison. The wardrobe department played their part perfectly, convincing Ventura that he had the measurement advantage and giving him the confidence to propose the contest in the first place. When the official measuring took place, Schwarzenegger's arms proved to be larger than Ventura's, much to the former wrestler's shock and confusion, since he had been told the opposite by the wardrobe department just days earlier. Ventura had no idea that he had been the victim of an elaborate setup designed to make him overconfident about his chances in the competition. Schwarzenegger walked away with his bottle of champagne and the satisfaction of having executed a perfect long-term prank that required multiple accomplices and careful planning. The scheme demonstrates the playful atmosphere that existed among the cast during filming, as these muscular action stars found ways to entertain themselves between the serious business of making an intense thriller in the challenging conditions of the Mexican jungle. Ventura later discovered the truth about the deception but took the joke in good humor, recognizing the elaborate nature of Schwarzenegger's planning and execution. Fact 7. The suit weighed more than a motorcycle. The Predator costume that Kevin Peter Hall wore throughout filming was an engineering marvel that weighed over 200 pounds, making it heavier than many motorcycles and creating enormous physical challenges for even an exceptionally large and strong actor like Hall. Despite standing 7 feet 2 inches tall and possessing considerable natural strength from his background as a college basketball player, Hall simply could not move convincingly while carrying the full weight of Stan Winston's elaborate creature design on his own. The costume's massive weight came from all the mechanical components, latex pieces, and structural elements needed to bring the Predator to life on screen, including the complex facial mechanisms that controlled the mandibles, the intricate body armor pieces, and the various technological gadgets that were built into the suit itself. Every detail of the Predator's appearance required physical materials and mechanical systems, and when combined together, they created a burden that was far beyond what any human performer could reasonably be expected to carry for extended periods. To solve this problem, the production team had to engineer a special support system that would allow Hall to move around the set without collapsing under the weight of the costume. They connected him to a bungee rig, which was essentially a series of cables and pulleys that helped support much of the suit's weight and allowed Hall to walk, run, and perform the physical actions that the role demanded without destroying his body in the process. The bungee system was carefully designed to be invisible to the cameras while providing Hall with just enough assistance to make his movements look natural and predatory, rather than like someone struggling under an enormous burden. The rig had to be constantly adjusted throughout filming to accommodate different scenes and camera angles, and the crew became experts at quickly setting up and dismantling the support system as they moved between locations in the Mexican jungle. Hall later described the experience of wearing the costume as one of the most physically demanding challenges of his acting career, even though he had previously worked in other creature suits, including his role as Harry in Harry and the Hendersons. The Predator's suit was significantly heavier and more complex than anything he had worn before, requiring him to memorize his movements carefully since he could barely see through the creature's mask. Fact 8. Cloaking effect used bright red suits. The Predator's famous invisibility cloaking effect, which creates that distinctive shimmering outline that bends light around the creature's body, was achieved through a surprisingly low-tech method that involved filming actors wearing bright red suits and using basic color removal techniques that were cutting-edge for 1987. The visual effects team chose bright red specifically because it was the color that sat furthest away from green on the color spectrum, and since the jungle environment was predominantly green, this made it much easier to isolate and remove the red elements during post-production. The process required filming each cloaking scene twice with slightly different camera setups to create the final effect that audiences see on screen. First, they would film the scene with a crew member wearing a bright red suit in the exact size and shape of the predator, having that person perform all the movements and actions that the invisible creature was supposed to make during that particular shot. The red suit acted as a placeholder that could be easily identified and manipulated by the optical effects team later. After completing the first take with the red suit, the crew would immediately film the exact same scene a second time, but this time without any actors present, and using a camera lens that was 30% wider than the one used for the first shot. This wider lens captured more of the surrounding jungle environment, providing extra background footage that would be crucial for creating the final invisibility effect. During post-production, the optical effects crew used chroma key techniques to remove all the bright red areas from the first shot, leaving behind empty spaces where the predator figure had been. They then took the wider jungle footage from the second shot and used it to fill in those empty areas. But because the second shot was filmed with a wider lens, the background scenery appeared slightly distorted when it was fitted into the narrower frame of the first shot. This distortion was exactly what the effects team wanted, because it created the illusion that light was bending around an invisible object, giving the predator that distinctive wavy, heat mirage appearance that made it look like it was using advanced alien technology to camouflage itself. The technique was so effective that it became the template for similar invisibility effects in countless science fiction films that followed. Fact 9. Carl Weathers' secret 3 a.m. workouts. Carl Weathers orchestrated an elaborate deception during the filming of Predator by maintaining a grueling secret workout schedule that began at 3 o'clock in the morning, all so he could pretend that his impressive physique was completely natural and required no effort to maintain. While the rest of the cast openly trained together and discussed their fitness routines, Weathers went to extraordinary lengths to hide the fact that he was working just as hard as everyone else to stay in peak physical condition for his role as Dylan. The former NFL player and Rocky co-star would wake up hours before the rest of the cast and crew to complete his daily training sessions in complete secrecy, using the early morning darkness to cover his activities and ensure that none of his fellow actors would catch him in the act of exercising. Weathers was so committed to maintaining this illusion that he would only work out when he was absolutely certain that the other actors were nowhere around to see him, going so far as to scout locations and timing to avoid any chance encounters. During the day when the cast was together, Weathers would act as if his muscular build and excellent conditioning were simply the result of good genetics and his background as a professional athlete, never mentioning the intense training sessions that he was putting himself through every single morning. He wanted his co-stars to believe that he could maintain his action hero physique without any of the dedicated gym work that the rest of them were doing, creating a kind of psychological advantage through the appearance of effortless superiority. This charade became even more amusing because the other cast members, including Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse Ventura, were openly competitive about their fitness routines and frequently discussed their training methods with each other. Schwarzenegger had even shipped gym equipment to Mexico specifically so the cast could work out together and build camaraderie through shared physical challenges. But Weathers deliberately avoided these group sessions to maintain his persona. The secret workout schedule required tremendous discipline and sacrifice, as Weathers was essentially doubling his daily physical demands by training alone before participating in the already exhausting work of filming action sequences in the challenging conditions of the Mexican jungle. His commitment to the deception demonstrates the level of psychological gamesmanship that was happening among these competitive actors during production. Fact 10. Hall also played Harry and the Hendersons. Kevin Peter Hall achieved the remarkable feat of playing both the most terrifying and the most beloved movie monsters of 1987 because he was simultaneously working on Harry and the Hendersons while filming Predator. creating one of the most dramatic acting range demonstrations in cinema history. In the span of just a few months, Hall transformed from the gentle, family-friendly Bigfoot character Harry to the deadly alien hunter that stalks Arnold Schwarzenegger through the jungle, showcasing his incredible versatility as a performer despite being completely hidden inside elaborate costumes for both roles. The timing of these two productions created a surreal situation where Hall would literally go from playing a lovable Sasquatch who befriends a suburban family to portraying a merciless extraterrestrial killer, often within the same time period, as both films were in various stages of production during 1987. Harry and the Hendersons was a heartwarming family comedy about a gentle Bigfoot who accidentally gets taken home by a family after a car accident, while Predator was an intense science fiction thriller about an alien trophy hunter systematically eliminating an elite military team. The contrast between these two characters could not have been more extreme, as Harry was designed to be cuddly, innocent, and endearing to children, while the Predator was created to be absolutely terrifying and represent the ultimate threat to even the most capable human warriors. Hall had to master completely different physical performances for each role, with Harry requiring gentle, bumbling movements that would make audiences laugh and feel protective, predatory motions that would create fear and tension. What makes this double duty even more interesting is that both creatures were achieved using similar practical effects techniques, with Hall wearing elaborate full-body suits designed by top special effects artists and relying on his physical performance to bring the characters to life. However, the emotional demands of each role were completely opposite, requiring Hall to tap into different aspects of his acting abilities depending on which monster he was portraying on any given day. The Academy Awards that year highlighted this unusual situation, as Stan Winston was nominated for Best Visual Effects for Predator, while Rick Baker won Best Makeup for Harry and the Hendersons, despite both creatures being achieved through identical methods involving the same talented performer wearing sophisticated costume designs. Fact 11. Nearly everyone got sick in Mexico. The production of Predator turned into a survival ordeal that rivaled the movie's plot, as almost every member of the cast and crew fell seriously ill during filming in the Mexican jungle, with the extreme conditions causing some people to lose up to 40 pounds over the course of the shoot. The problems began almost immediately when the production set up their base of operations at a Mexican hotel that had serious issues with its water purification system, leading to widespread cases of travelers' diarrhea and fever among everyone involved in the film. Director John McTiernan was so concerned about getting sick from the local food and water that he essentially refused to eat much of anything during the entire production, surviving on a minimal diet that caused him to lose 25 pounds by the time filming wrapped. The line producer fared even worse, dropping almost 40 pounds as he struggled with repeated bouts of illness while trying to keep the production on schedule despite the challenging conditions. The health problems were compounded by the extreme heat and humidity of the jungle environment, which created additional stress on everyone's systems and made recovery from illness much more difficult than it would have been in a normal setting. The cast and crew had to deal with dangerous wildlife as well, including encounters with venomous snakes that posed a constant threat as they moved through the dense vegetation to reach their filming locations. Actor Richard Chaves, who played Poncho in the film, had particularly bad luck with the local wildlife and was repeatedly bitten by aggressive ants that left him covered in painful welts. The insect problems were so severe that they became a daily hazard that everyone had to work around, adding another layer of misery to an already difficult shoot. Arnold Schwarzenegger managed to avoid some of the worst health issues, but even he lost a significant amount of weight during production, though in his case it was partly intentional, as he wanted to look more lean and survival-ready for his character's final confrontation with the Predator. The widespread illness became such a problem that it threatened to shut down production entirely at several points, as key cast and crew members were too sick to work effectively in the demanding jungle environment that required long days of physical labor in extreme heat. Fact 12. Thermal vision was mostly fake. The Predator's iconic thermal vision sequences that show the jungle through the alien's heat-sensing perspective were almost entirely created using fake thermal imaging techniques, because real thermal cameras in 1987 were completely useless in the tropical environment where the film was shot. The expensive and extremely heavy thermal imaging equipment that the production rented couldn't detect any meaningful temperature differences between the actor's body heat and the ambient temperature of the sweltering Mexican jungle, making it impossible to capture the dramatic heat signatures that the filmmakers needed for the aliens' point-of-view shots. Since the real thermal cameras failed to produce usable footage, the visual effects team had to develop creative workarounds to achieve the distinctive look that audiences associate with the Predator's advanced hunting technology. For most of the thermal vision scenes throughout the movie, they used regular cameras to film the action, and then artificially colored the film negatives during post-production to create the false heat signature effect that appears on screen. The few genuine thermal shots that actually made it into the final film required elaborate and time-consuming setup procedures that had to be repeated for each take. The crew would spray ice-cold water all over the surrounding jungle area to dramatically lower the ambient temperature, creating enough of a temperature contrast that the thermal cameras could finally distinguish between the environment and the human subjects. Meanwhile, the actors had to stand near fires or heat sources immediately before filming to raise their body temperatures above the cooled-down background. This process was incredibly impractical and could only be used for a handful of shots where the specific camera angles and scene requirements made it absolutely necessary to use real thermal imaging rather than the artificial coloring technique. The ice water treatment had to cover large areas of the jungle set, and the actors had to time their movements perfectly to maintain their elevated body heat for the brief moments when the cameras were rolling. The artificial thermal vision effect created through post-production coloring was so convincing that most viewers never realized they were looking at fake heat signatures rather than actual thermal camera footage. This technique became the standard method for creating thermal vision effects in countless action and science fiction films that followed, proving more practical and visually consistent than trying to use real thermal imaging equipment in challenging filming conditions. Fact 13. 2 future governors were in the cast. Predator holds the remarkable distinction of featuring 2 actors who would eventually become state governors, making it quite possibly the most politically successful action movie cast ever assembled in Hollywood history. Arnold Schwarzenegger, who played the lead role of Dutch, went on to serve as the Republican governor of California from 2003 to 2011, while Jesse Ventura, who portrayed the tobacco-chewing Blaine with his massive minigun nicknamed Old Painless, became the Reform Party governor of Minnesota from 1999 to 2003. The political careers of both men took very different paths after their time together in the Mexican jungle, with Schwarzenegger following a more traditional route through the Republican Party establishment, while Ventura shocked the political world by winning the Minnesota gubernatorial race as a third-party candidate running on the Reform Party ticket. Ventura's victory was particularly surprising because he defeated both major party candidates despite having no previous political experience beyond his unconventional background as a professional wrestler, Navy SEAL, and occasional actor. What makes their shared political success even more interesting is that a third cast member, Sonny Landham, who played the tracker Billy in the film, also attempted to follow his co-stars into politics by running for governor of Kentucky. Though he failed to win the Republican Party nomination and never achieved the electoral success of Schwarzenegger and Ventura, Landam's unsuccessful gubernatorial campaign means that 3 members of Dutch's elite commando team eventually tried their hand at running for the highest office in their respective states. The odds of any single movie producing multiple state governors are astronomically small, considering that there are only 50 governors in the entire United States at any given time, and the entertainment industry rarely serves as a launching pad for successful political careers. The fact that 2 cast members from the same action movie managed to reach such high levels of political office represents an almost unprecedented convergence of Hollywood's celebrity and American electoral politics. Both Schwarzenegger and Ventura have remained proud of their work on Predator throughout their political careers, often referencing the film in interviews and campaign appearances as an example of their entertainment industry credentials and their ability to work as part of a team under challenging circumstances. Fact 14. The original script slipped under a door. The Predator movie exists today because brothers Jim and John Thomas resorted to literally sliding their screenplay under an executive's door at 21st Century Fox, using this desperate tactic after they were unable to get meetings through any of the normal Hollywood channels available to aspiring screenwriters. The Thomas brothers were complete unknowns in the entertainment industry with no connections, no agent representation, and no credibility that would have allowed them to pitch their script through the established system that most writers use to get their work in front of studio decision-makers. Their original screenplay was titled Hunter rather than Predator, and it told the story of an alien creature hunting human soldiers in a jungle setting, but the brothers had no way to get anyone in Hollywood to actually read their work, despite spending considerable time and effort developing what they believed was a compelling science fiction thriller concept. The traditional route of getting an agent to represent the script and arrange meetings with studio executives was completely closed to them because they had no previous writing credits or industry relationships. Faced with this impossible situation, the Thomas brothers decided to take matters into their own hands and physically deliver their script to 21st Century Fox using the most direct method they could think of. They somehow managed to get into the studio building and locate the office of executive Michael Levy, who would later serve as executive producer on the sequel Predator 2, and they slipped their Hunter screenplay under his door when he wasn't in his office. This unconventional delivery method actually worked, as Levy eventually discovered the script, read it, and recognized its potential as the foundation for a major studio action film. Levy then brought the screenplay to producer Joel Silver, who had experience with similar action projects including Commando, and saw the opportunity to transform the Thomas brothers' science fiction concept into a vehicle for Arnold Schwarzenegger and other major action stars of the 1980s. The success of this door-sliding strategy demonstrates both the brothers' determination to get their work noticed and the sometimes random nature of how projects get discovered in Hollywood, where a great script can languish in obscurity unless it somehow finds its way to the right person at the right time, through whatever means necessary. Fact 15. Predator head, inspired by office art. The Predator's distinctive dreadlock-like hair appendages and overall head design came from an unexpected source of inspiration. A painting of a Rastafarian warrior that was hanging on the wall in producer Joel Silver's office, which special effects artist Stan Winston spotted during their meetings about redesigning the alien creature. Winston was struggling to come up with a compelling new look for the Predator after the original design had failed so spectacularly during the early stages of filming, and he found himself drawn to the striking visual elements of the artwork that Silver had chosen to decorate his workspace. The painting depicted a fierce warrior figure with long, flowing dreadlocks that created a powerful and intimidating silhouette, and Winston realized that this hairstyle could be adapted to create a truly alien appearance when combined with other non-human features. He began incorporating elements of the Rastafarian warrior's hair into his creature designs, transforming the traditional dreadlock concept into something that would look appropriately extraterrestrial, while still maintaining the intimidating presence that the original painting conveyed. Winston's creative process involved taking the basic visual concept from Silver's office art and combining it with other design elements, most notably the mandible suggestion that James Cameron had made during their airplane conversation. The fusion of these two very different inspirations, the Rastafarian warrior painting and Cameron's arthropod mandible concept, created the unique look that has defined the Predator character for decades. The choice to use dreadlock-style appendages also solved several practical problems that Winston was facing with the creature design, as these hair-like structures could be made from flexible materials that would move naturally during filming, while also helping to create a more imposing silhouette that would make the Predator appear larger and more threatening on camera. The appendages also added to the creature's alien appearance without requiring complex mechanical components that might have been difficult to operate in the challenging jungle filming conditions. Winston later explained that he specifically wanted to base the Predator design on a Rastafarian warrior concept, and Silver's office painting provided the perfect visual reference point that helped him translate this idea into a practical creature design that could be brought to life through costume and makeup effects rather than expensive and unreliable mechanical systems.